Okay, now we're going to turn our attention to the book award, and to introduce all of that, we have our next speaker, who is absolutely huge in terms of popularity and reputation. Our speaker is John Land, and let's have a short video to introduce John to you.
John Land is the USA Today best-selling author of more than 60 books, over 10 of which feature Texas Ranger Caitlin Strong. This critically acclaimed series has won more than a dozen awards, including the 2019 International Book Award for Best Thriller for Strong as Steel. John was also a screenwriter for the film Dirty Deeds and has taken over writing the popular Murder, She Wrote mystery series. His latest release, Blood Moon, co-authored with Heather Graham, published on the 8th of November a few weeks ago, and is almost certain to be another bestseller. John is highly active in the writer community and in particular helping debut and mid-list thriller writers advance their careers. Here with his thoughts on the art of storytelling, welcome John.
John, can you unmute yourself? I know you're there.
Here we go. How's that?
Hi, there you are, John. That's fantastic. So, John, before you talk and give your your speech, just tell us how, with so many successful books, can you tell us what makes a page-turning story?
Wow. Well, two things, and it's kind of like my unwritten rules, no pun intended. What makes a page-turning story is every chapter begins with a hook. Every chapter ends with a cliffhanger. In other words, you want to suck the reader in right from the first line, and then you want to write a line at the very end of every chapter or scene that makes it impossible for the reader to put the book down. And the most important thing when you're thinking about that is, if you can't stop writing, if you love the story you're telling so much that you can't stop, the reader won't be able to stop either. In other words, you have to be your own biggest fan. You have to be, in your minds, you have to love what you do. You have to love your story. Because if you don't love it, you can't expect anyone else to love it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think what you're saying about there's a hook in the beginning and a cliffhanger at the end, that's very important. And all of us writers can really take that rule and make it our own rule. We can steal it from you, John. If you don't mind, we'll all steal it from you.
That's one of my themes of whenever I talk about writing, to quote Victor Hugo, good writers borrow, great writers steal. I've always wanted someone to steal from me, like I've stolen from Clive Cussler and Robert Ludlum and Stephen King and David Morrell and James Lee Burke and I'm still stealing. It's what we all do. But so everyone out there is more than welcome. There's 126 people right now in with us, and everyone is welcome to steal whatever you like from me. I'd consider it a compliment.
Yeah.
John, we were talking the other day and you had so much advice to give our writers. Do you want to share some of that advice?
I was thinking as I was listening to Barry and Dave, just two outstanding speakers. I always, I'm as someone who works in the film business a little bit as well, not as much as I'd like to. Whenever I hear the word producer and a name like Barry Evans, I get very excited. I could tell some Robert Evans stories, but that's a topic for another day. The great producer Robert Evans, who I actually met later in his life, and I had great admiration for him. But the writing process, the book, the storytelling process, and that's what I loved about what Barry said, because you cannot, first of all, you cannot distinguish or separate storytelling from writing. If you're a writer, you're a storyteller. And I think a lot of times, when people, well, let me put it this way. When people ask me, what's the most important thing I need to do if I want to be a writer? And that's probably the question that all writers get asked the most. And there's a lot of answers you can give. But the first one is tell a great story. Not write a great story, tell a great story. Because I learned to write. Here's something I didn't say in our prep call the other day. How did I learn to do what I do? Where did this come from? How is it that writing and storytelling comes so easily to me? I worked at a summer camp in my teens and early 20s, and actually longer. And in those days, and we're talking, I'm dating myself now. David's just a kid over there. I see, I'm dating myself, but back in the 70s, 80s, no social media. These kids came to camp, overnight camp called Samoset in Casco, Maine, in New England. Beautiful camp. And entertainment at night was telling stories. Counselors who could tell stories. So I learned how to write, how to storytell around a campfire, telling old Twilight Zones, Stephen King stories. And what I learned that is irreplaceable, when you're telling a story out loud to a group of 12-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 9-year-olds, whatever, you know immediately when you've lost them from their body language. You can see their faces. Like I can see the faces of the people here in the gallery. And that imbued in me an instinctive sense of pacing. Because as Barry and David and everybody else is going to speak today, and all the writers who are in this room with us know, pace is everything. Books can be bad and do really well, but books cannot be boring. Stories cannot be boring. There have been a lot of very bad movies that have been made, and a lot of bad books that have been written that have been incredibly successful. A lot of times because they're well paced, and sometimes just because of the way they're marketed. But I'd like to think pacing has something to do with it. So I learned how to write, to tell stories around those campfires. And the reason I bring that up in answer to your question, a long answer to a short question, the relationship between the writer and the reader is very intimate and very personal. When someone is reading your book, if you're lucky enough to sell a lot of books, or if you're lucky enough to make a movie that a lot of people see, the way movies and books are consumed are not in groups. Most people are watching movies on their phones or television now by themselves, just the way people read books. They're consuming fiction, they're consuming stories. It's very personal because it's one-on-one. It's the writer talking to the reader. So another piece of advice I like to give people is the mark of a great story is that the reader thinks it was written only for them. That the writer wrote it for one person. And thank you, Barry. Coming from Barry, if I see Barry, someone like Barry or David applauding, I get very excited. Because by the way, people here will notice that I'm not on the short list of anything, even though because I got cut. So I'm a great example for everyone here of how you deal. It is ironic, isn't it? That even though my last book, not this one, not Blood Moon, which just came out, but my last one, Murder at the CDC from the Capital Crime series, it didn't make the short list. So, but I'm used to it. But here I am giving the keynote. So not all is well with the world. So I think the intimate relationship, the idea that it's written for one person. And here's the thing, what I'm getting at. Here's the central thing. The first movie I ever saw, and I genuinely believe that every book I write, every story I write goes back to this. The first movie I saw, live and in person with my parents, was the original 101 Dalmatians. Was there ever a worse villain than Cruella de Vil? Darth Vader doesn't even compare to Cruella de Vil. Hannibal Lecter doesn't hold a candle to Cruella de Vil. She was going to kill 100 puppies to make a coat. I mean, and I really believe that every story I've written has Cruella de Vil. It has the heroes. It has a quest, a noble quest where a hero must go somewhere to save something, which brings me to what I was about to say. Another movie I remember from my youth was the original, dating myself again, Barry, Jason and the Argonauts, where the special effects were done by Ray Harryhauser, stop motion animation. And if you look at those special effects compared to what we have today in Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, had to get that in there, for the little plug for HBO. They're so chintzy. And yet, when I'm 7 years old and the Colossus of Rhodes statue steps down off the pedestal, my mouth dropped. So here's the point I want to get at. The mark of a great storyteller is they make the reader feel like a kid again. And I realized this firsthand back when the original Game of Thrones was wrapping up and into its 8th season. And I'm in the gym working out with a bunch of guys, some younger than me, but still not kids. And we're talking about dragons. We're talking about the battle that's coming next. I watched episode 3 of the final season of Game of Thrones, which is called The Long Night. It's the battle between the living and the dead that the entire series built toward over 8 seasons and 10 years. For 10 years since the first episode, this was the episode we were waiting for. It turned out to be the penultimate episode, not the final one. And I have to tell you, it lived up to all my expectations. And in watching that episode, in watching The Long Night, I felt just like I felt as that little boy sitting in the audience with my parents watching Jason and the Argonauts. And that is what I try to do, whether I'm writing science fiction with Heather Graham in the Rising series like Blood Moon, whether I'm writing Caitlin Strong, whether I'm writing, whatever I'm writing, I want to make you, just go into a different mode. I mean, think about when you're a kid and you're reading a book or watching a movie. Why is it that a 4 or 5-year-old can watch the same movie 1,000 times? And sometimes 5 times in the same day. Toy Story ends, Toy Story starts again. The Lion King ends and Rafiki is back 10 seconds later. It's in the past. Not so much, with movies with kids. The reason is because the films, the stories, whether it be Sesame Street, whether it be Disney, what they're watching totally engulfs them. It enmeshes them. It brings them into the world of the story. And more than anything else, what a writer needs to do is to bring the reader into the story. How do you do that? That's easy to say, right? Right, Paul and Ken? Easy to say, but hard to do. Not really. When writers are struggling, when you're stuck, I don't believe in writer's block, by the way, that's another subject. When you're struggling, it's because often you're writing from the outside in instead of the inside out. In other words, once again, Barry's nodding, so I know I'm saying something smart, which is very unusual for me. Barry, you should almost unmute yourself so we can just do this together, right? David, you could join in too. We could do a little panel.
I'm too busy writing down your words of wisdom to steal. Sorry.
Hey, we're being taped. So anyway, it's the notion of writing from the inside out. When I write a scene, I'm writing from a specific viewpoint of a character. Every scene is written from one viewpoint, not the omniscient narrator. And I'm writing what the character is seeing, not what I'm seeing, what the character is seeing. Great bit of advice. There are some things you think you're not going to get anymore as you get older. Like, I'm never going to get another great piece of advice that resonates with me. And then one of my editors repeated a line from James Lee Burke that they had heard it when he gave a talk. And the line was, and this applies to film even more than books, but being a cinematic writer and a screenwriter as well. The advice from James Lee Burke is, when writing a scene, always know where the light is coming from. I'm running my eyes from if you see me moving my head, it's because when I do these kind of talks in person, I like to have eye contact. So I'm actually looking at the people on this page I should probably go over and share myself with my eye contact with the people on the other pages, because we have so many here. So that's the reason. When writing a scene, always remember, always know where the light is coming from. And if you know where the light is coming from, you'll be able to describe that scene and paint that picture in a way that allows the reader to see what they need to see. And that's the key. Great writing, Ken and Paula and everyone. By the way, I just got to notice that my internet is unstable. So if something goes wrong, if I freeze, I'll come back. So not to worry, I can always do this on my phone too. So when writing from the inside, when painting a picture, you are giving the reader not too much. You're giving them what they need to see, like they're watching a movie more than reading a book. Writing is misdirection. A lot of times you're holding up, you're distracting audiences from what's really happening. When I talk about writing, I mix movies and screenplays and books. I lump them all together because pop culture is pop culture. And one of the movies, I don't think I've given a talk in the last 20 years without talking about the film, The Usual Suspects, because it is the ultimate act of misdirection, in the same way The Sixth Sense is, the same way Arlington Road is, the same way the great underrated film Identity is. You're watching something, but it's not the thing. The writers and the director, in the case of a film, has you looking at something that isn't what is there. You're seeing what they want you to see. In the case of The Usual Suspects, the brilliant use of misdirection of Kevin Spacey sitting in that office as Verbal Kint, conning Chaz Palminteri's detective Dave Cunyan into believing his story, into believing this myth about this supervillain named Kaiser Sose. And of course, I never give away the ending of any movie. But if you haven't seen The Usual Suspects, if you want to have a great exercise in writing, watch it. And then watch it again. Because the mark of a great movie like that uses misdirection, or a book, is you want to go right back and watch all the things you missed the first time. And that's the genius of great writing. I mean, and this is something I haven't talked about a lot. Ask yourself, what books have you not just read and enjoyed, but read more than once, or read multiple times? What is it about that book that keeps you coming back to it? For me, I think I've read Marathon Man 10 times, literally 10 times. I've read, I wish I had written Ray Bradbury's Something Wicked This Way Comes. I've probably read 5 times. And every time I read it, or every time I watch The Usual Suspects again, I see something I didn't see any time before. So when you're writing, you want to give your readers the experience, or your viewers, if you're writing a screenplay, the same experience you had, that when you were in a movie that you watched 100 times, or a book you read 10 times. In other words, and I'll take this back to what I said before. What is it about a 4-year-old that he or she can watch the same movie 5 times a day for 3 months and never want to watch anything else? If you can write that kind of story for an adult, you will supplant Stephen King and Lee Child and everyone else from the top of the bestseller list, because that's the secret to the greatest success any of us can ever achieve. By the way, we have the chat room, so if anybody has a question, put it in the chat, and then I don't want to look at the chat myself because it'll distract me. So I'll rely on my bosses, Ken and Paula, to if a question comes in that's interesting, or even comes in at all, because we might only get one, just repeat it to me and I will do my best to answer it. But
we'll come back to that. We certainly come back to that, John, because I think there's probably going to be lots of questions going on, but we would love it if you would be so kind as to announce the book award. We want you to announce the book award fiction winner as well as the non-fiction winners.
Yeah.
All right. Now let's see. I've got in front of me. I want to make sure I.
Before we do that,
John, it'll just provide a bit of time for maybe some of the questions to come in, and if we can all.
Oh, good idea.
but before you announce them, let's just be reminded of who is on the book award shortlist. Dexter, come here. Sorry, our little dog is just walking around. All we can hear is clip, 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 clip of his little toenails on the parquet flooring in this conference
He's got
room.
no sense of occasion. that
Yeah,
dog,
he's disturbing everything. So, John, you were going to announce our winners, our book award winners.
First of all, John, the book award non-fiction winner. Do you have the result there?
I do. I have the results. The winner for the Page Turner Nonfiction Book Award of this year is Tamara Ryan for The Third Law.
Tamara, I saw you coming into the room. Can you come forward and tell us how you feel?
Probably got sick and left after listening to me.
No, there's Tamara. I can see her. Tamara, come on.
Here I am.
There you are.
Well, Tamara,
Well,
congratulations.
Thank you very much. What a lovely surprise.
Anything to
I
say?
don't know if I'm supposed to say anything other than that.
You can say whatever you feel.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it very much. This book was actually a labor of love related to my experiences in my work and my vocation. So I appreciate that it has been as well received as it has.
Yes, well, Tamara, listen, well done. And we're now going to listen to a pre-recording of a little excerpt from your The Third Law. And this is a new thing. We haven't done this before, asking some of the authors and writers to read a little bit from their submission. So here is Tamara's submission.
This is a reading by Tamara Ryan from The Third Law. I like things to be in compartments. My sock drawer displays each pair folded into thirds and filed according to color. My spice cabinet is alphabetized. Chaos is fine as long as I can assess the situation, develop a plan, and put things in order relatively quickly. Putting things in order relatively quickly was exactly what I set out to do when I became CEO of Women's Bean Project in 2003. Women's Bean Project, or the Bean as it is sometimes called, is a place where chronically unemployed and impoverished women can come for a second chance in life. Most of the women who arrive at the Bean Project have never held a job longer than a year. They are convicted felons, recovering addicts, victims of domestic violence. Many were teenage mothers and high school dropouts. They come to Women's Bean Project for a chance to create new lives out of the rubble theirs have become.
Tamara, listen, congratulations on winning one of our, big awards in the Page Turner overall scheme. And listen, well done on all your work.
You do fantastic work.
Yeah,
really, you do.
It's an amazing project. So congratulations all round.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Well deserved. John, you now have an announcement to make about the Book Award fiction winner.
I do. And did we already show the short list of that too?
Yes, the fiction and non-fiction were all in that little piece we saw.
Then without further delay, the winner for the Page Turner Fiction Book Award is Tom Joyce for The Missing Piece.
Tom?
Have we got Tom with us?
Congratulations, Tom. I saw you, Tom. I saw you earlier. Are you there?
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you. We can see you now. How do you feel? Well done. Congratulations.
I feel I am humbled. I'm humbled. I'm obviously from across the pond from a lot of you guys, but yeah, no, I'm very humbled and very thankful that that people are reading it. Yeah.
Well, Tom, well done. As with tomorrow, the book award is one of our biggest and most popular awards. So well done for coming out at the top of the pack with the missing piece. Now, don't go away. Don't think that's it. And I think I'll watch the television. Just hang on there for a moment.
I will be here. Yes, I'm
We've got lots of networking and lots of other lovely surprises for everybody. But we'd love to talk to you at the networking about how you feel about your win. And John, thank you very much for coming on. We'd love to. As we're going to watch the questions, we're going to see if anybody questions come in, and we'll be throwing them at you if that's okay.
Not a problem. Just come back anytime you want.
Thank you.